So this is a piece I've been reworking for a while now. It's called 33-Year-Old Female with Palpable Mass. I asked the doctor if I could see it afterward, imagining a stainless steel dessert tray, a glittering tumescence unveiled. "I'm afraid it'll need to go straight to the lab," she said. "Well, what about after that?" "It won't be much of an it when they're done with it, I'm afraid. Tell you what, we'll get someone to photograph it for you." "Please," I pleaded. But no photos were taken, and I woke from the anesthesia too high on morphine to complain. It's hard to believe my request was an unusual one, that the hospital had no system in place to indulge it. If they were smart, they could make a little extra money. Install an automatic camera like the ones on roller coasters that snap your picture when you go through the tunnel. Amusement parks get away with charging $10 to $15 per photo, and that for pictures of the outside of the body that anyone can see for free. If you give birth to a dead baby, I assume they bring it to you afterward, so you can count your misery on its tiny fingers. I didn't want to have a baby, but perhaps for that very reason, I wanted to look at this thing my body had made. 12 centimeters in diameter, alternately referred to as grapefruit or softball-sized, folded around my left ovary like Ms. Pac-Man munching a pellet. This mass might be the closest thing to a baby I was ever going to have. Was it too much to ask for a glimpse of it? What is a hospital, if not a temple founded on such morbidities? The day of surgery is unlike any other day. From the moment you wake up, you are completely alive. You get to see strange rooms in the hospital. If you are insured, like I was, there may be a private waiting room where you can listen to a creative visualization DVD and make any final changes to your living will. Then you enter a maze of cubicles in which you encounter various nurses and the anesthesiologist with tattooed arms like a carny. All these people seem incredibly alive also. You get to walk, barefoot and robed, into the operating room, a tiled theater of busy actors pretending not to notice your presence, and climb all by yourself up onto the table, where the man with the tattooed arms whispers something very important to you that you will never remember, and you're off. The doctor spoke in an impenetrable block of brisk, cheerful bird song during her post-surgical visit, instructing the nurses on how often to inflate the puffy boots that would prevent the blood from pooling in my legs. I wanted to bring up her promise of photographs, but didn't want to seem ungrateful. She had known I was odd and a poet since the first day she examined me. I had been waiting in my paper smock for what seemed an eternity and decided to amuse myself by reading aloud from my ultrasound report in poetry voice. I thought I could use it to entertain hospital visitors. This one's called 33-Year-Old Female with Palpable Mass. The ovary is not discreetly seen. Focal echogenicity is present along a septal interface. Trace-free fluid is present within the cul-de-sac. Thank you. Thank you. While I was bowing to my invisible audience, the doctor finally walked in, my bare ass in her face. The best part about the ultrasound poem was at the very bottom of the page, dictated by Maya Mew, MD. The implication being that my body wrote the poem. She was just taking it down. I did perform for visitors. using the crisis my body offered as a stage. Despite being a poet, I'm not a person who seizes many opportunities for effusiveness, but once I seize, it's hard to let go. I remember that first night in the hospital, asking my mother, the nurse practitioner who had flown from Chicago weeks before to take care of everything and stayed on as my surgery date kept getting postponed, to read to me from a book of poems by C.D. Wright. I remember her saying the line, "Great goblets of magnolia light," and telling her from my morphine cloud, "I can tell you love that line by the way your mouth becomes a goblet holding it." Only later did I realize how exhausted, how relieved she must have been, and how eager to get back to her own life. Weeks passed, and I sank deep into a sort of post-event slump. I requested my surgical records, greedy for more poetry. What had the anesthesiologist said to me? Maybe it had been recorded. When I got to the line, "moved patient into a frog-legged position," I felt so sick I had to set down the folder. It's one thing to imagine people cutting into you and putting their hands inside you, and quite another to imagine them manipulating your unconscious limbs. I'm willing to accept that my insides don't fully belong to me. I can't touch them or control them. Like a medieval peasant, I live in a swirl of medical superstition. For instance, I believe the heart governs love. I happily turn my insides over to those who have studied, observed, operated. But surely my legs are my own, and they ought to have asked permission to move them. Months later, back at work, I finally looked at photos on the internet. Glossy red and purple balloons deflating against pastel backdrops. I wondered who took the photographs, who posed them, who chose the colors for the backdrops. Some were ghastlier than others, and in this context, by ghastly, I mean beautiful. I wondered if each mass was beautiful in its own right and depended only on an artful eye to bring its loveliness to light. Great goblets of magnolia light. Another mouth might have mangled the words. That's for my mom.